We will now proceed with the high-level situational analysis of the textile and apparel sector, which will be moderated by Mrs. Bineswari Bulaki, Economic Affairs Officer, Sub-Regional Initiative Section, UNECA, UNECA Sub-Regional Office for Southern Africa. We have among us the panelists, which includes Dr. Sabrina Ramsamy Rana, Director of the Fashion and Design Institute. We also have Mr. Kendall Tang, Chief Executive Officer of Artinits. We have Mr. Girish Bhaktavan Singh, Director, Industry, Economic Development Board, Mauritius. And we have Mrs. Jenny Pidial, Chief Executive Officer of Fitu Garments Limited. So the floor is yours, Mrs. Bulaki.
Hello, good afternoon. I hope everybody can hear me well. Oui? On m'entend? Okay. So for the second day, I get to speak right after lunch. So I hope this time we are going to get the full attention of the audience. Thank you very much. So we are very pleased to have this session. I'm told that it is about the situational analysis of the textile and apparel sector, but I think I'm going to usurp the position of chair to bring a slight change to it, because I think we have heard a lot about what is going on, the challenges, what government is doing, and I think it's really time now to think forward. Where do we go from here? So I hope, dear panelists, that we will also be able to hear your ideas and insights as to how can we now shape the future of a textile and apparel sector and manufacturing. So just to introduce myself, my name is Aruna Bulaki. I am an Economic Affairs Officer at the United Nations Economic Commission for Africa. UNECA is, in the UN there are 5 regional economic commissions for each region. And UNECA, we are the technical arm, if you want, of the African Union. We are the Regional Economic Commission for Africa. The headquarters is based in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia. And in each sub-region, there's a sub-regional office. Our office based in Zambia, Lusaka, covers Southern Africa, including Mauritius. So that's why we are here, and we are very privileged and happy to partner with the Ministry of Industry. So I think I'm going to let the panelists introduce themselves. I do have with me the bios and all that, but I don't want to read it. I think I'll let you, each one of you, there's good gender balance today on this panel. And so ladies first. So I shall let Miss Jenny Pidial to introduce herself. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Chair. And thank you, colleagues, for inviting me here today. So my name is Jenny Pidial. I'm the CEO of Fitu Garments Limited. In fact, I started my factory since 27 years with 2 machinists, and nowadays I'm employing over 100 people. So we start from crash, having lots of up and down, but I'm still not giving up. I'm still trusting myself in going forward with textile. Definitely we'll need to go to automation, so I leave the floor to my colleague. Thank you.
Hello everyone, good afternoon. Well, I was introduced earlier by everyone, Mrs. Bulaki, thank you for leaving the floor to me. I'm Dr. Sabrina Ramsamy Rana. I had 20 years of experience as an academic at the University of Mauritius. And our focus as LVI is to reinvent our strategy in terms of programs development, working closely with industry, customization of our programs to the industry needs, and also reinvent the terms of strategy in terms of policies, how we work closely with our ministry and other sectors in Mauritius. Thank you.
My name is Kendall Tang, so I've been introduced earlier. What I can add is, so I'm the CEO of Artinits. We have taken the challenge about 10 years back to really maintain our activities in Mauritius, and it was not an easy decision because all our competitors were delocalizing, and it was not an easy decision because all our competitors were delocalizing, and it was not an easy decision because all our competitors were delocalizing, and it was not an easy decision because all our competitors were delocalizing, and it was not an easy decision because all our competitors were delocalizing, and it was not an easy decision because all our competitors were delocalizing, and it was not an easy decision because all our competitors were delocalizing, and it was not an easy decision because all our competitors were delocalizing, and it was not an easy decision because all our competitors were delocalizing, and it was not an easy decision because all our competitors were delocalizing, and it was not an easy decision because all our competitors were delocalizing, and it was not an easy decision because all our competitors were delocalizing, and it was not an easy decision because all our competitors were delocalizing, and it was not an easy decision because all our competitors were delocalizing, and it was not an easy decision because all our competitors were delocalizing, and it was not an easy decision because all our competitors were delocalizing, and it was but comes out to be, I think, a good decision when we look back. And the team did a great effort to take up the challenge and transform the company into a much more advanced and productive one. And we have been able to, in fact, last year we have a record in terms of profitability. So we are still growing and we are still investing a lot in Mauritius.
Thank you. I'm Girish Bhaktuvansingh. I'm Director of Industry at Economic Development Board. So just briefly, a friend to the industry, well-wisher. At times, I'm a consultant. At times, I'm a facilitator to make things happen. Thank you.
Thank you, panelists. I would like to suggest that we structure the panel maybe in two parts. In the first part, maybe let's look at, we all know that SMEs throughout the world have had difficulties to address the challenges of COVID. And as we are trying to get out of this crisis and build forward, now there is those geopolitical tensions being built over the Russia and Ukraine crisis. So this is not part of a script, Mr. Tang, but would it be possible for you to tell us in 2 minutes what has been your most, among maybe your most pressing challenges over the last 2 years due to COVID? And how do you think this Russia-Ukraine crisis is going to affect SMEs in Mauritius? Just in 2 minutes, and then I will ask Ms. Jenny Pidia to do the same. Thank you.
The textile industry is a very complex supply chain. We import products from South Korea, China, India, Taiwan, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, a lot of Vietnam, Hong Kong, South Africa, Turkey. So when this COVID-19 struck us, a lot of our products, raw material we weren't able to get them on time. And so this really affected part of our business. But fortunately, we saw that coming because, as I've said earlier, there's less and less flight coming to Mauritius, less ships. So we have tried to do, first thing is to internalize a lot of the production. So in fact, we produce our own labels, we produce our own, some of the accessories. We try to be as autonomous as possible. And the second thing is to have a buffer stock big enough to be able to face shortages and use that buffer stock. Maybe there's a third point. We also try to standardize. So this is a very important element. When we standardize our production, then there's less different types of material to keep in stock. So this is how we face it. But obviously we face a lot of challenges and a lot of disruptions in spite of all these decisions.
Thank you, Mr. Tang. But I understand that RTL needs you among the biggest enterprises on the island. So you're kind of talking from the perspective of a medium company or a larger company. How big is your company? I don't know. I think
we represent about 12 to 15% of the exports.
Ah. Ah oui, ça c'est grand quand même. 12 to 15%, yeah. So you're among the largest players on the island.
No,
not the largest. So who is the largest player on the island?
Ciel, probably.
Ciel, okay. Probably. We are not here today. What about you, Ms. Jenny Pidial? If you could also give us an idea of how big or small your company is, and in 2 minutes, what has been your most pressing concerns these last 2 years?
Well, we are not that big as Mr. Kanda. We are very small. We are only 100 people that we are employing. But when we are in a SME, it's a very, very difficult work to be done. It's like, SMEs, we have lots of problems like finance, like workforce, like machineries. Okay, we all know that we need to go to automation, but how to go to that automation? Because there's a big lack of capital. Furthermore, the worst scenario is all customers who are coming to us, they're coming to us with, LC of 120 days or 90 days. So there's the working capital behind that also is a lack for SMEs. Not only that, if we go with other things, it's we need to have all systems within. This is a major problem for SMEs also, because all our programs, we don't have people to have an ERC program, or we have like everything being digitalized or computerized. So all these are problems for SMEs that we need to talk about. Thank you.
Thank you. So, Mr. Bhaktawansingh, you are the man with the solutions at the Economic Development Board. We've heard from our two entrepreneurs, there's a lot of uncertainties due to the pandemic, there's the recent conflict over Ukraine and Russia. We have heard since yesterday what are the challenges being faced by the manufacturing sector associated with rising costs of production and logistics, interruption to supply chains. So how do you think, what is your best advice to our Mauritian enterprises? How do you think they can address the challenges of the current situation?
Yes, thank you. Now, coming to the challenges that are being faced by the industry, including logistic, freight, and all these challenges that you have rightly mentioned. So it's not a solution that comes from me. It's not a solution that comes only from EDB. It's a collective approach in Mauritius. We have a very collective approach, public and private. And I must tell you that's why there have been a number of commissions that have been set up by the Ministry of Finance also to listen to possible solutions on a number of key issues, including automation, including logistics. I'll take one point with regard, for example, everyone is suffering, small, medium, or big, about the rising cost of freight, okay? The freight has been skyrocketing, not only for Mauritius. So the freight has been going 4 times, 5 times, 6 times, and even we realize that even US companies, the biggest consumer, they themselves having the freight being extremely increased than what they're importing from China. And for Mauritius, we have realized also the freight that we are paying from China for sourcing is increasing 6 times maybe, and not necessarily the same rate of increasing again from Mauritius to Europe. Okay, so we had to look for quick solutions, you know, at this time, because this is a difficult situation. Immediately, one of the decisions taken by the government in the refund that we are having, TPMS, we increased that refund from 40 to 60%. And we also, there has been discussion in Mauritius carrying out a number of cargo flights, which is helping the industry enormously, and still this cargo is going on. So there have been certain decisions being taken, and I know from my colleagues of MPA, discussion with shipping lines, how to go to attract shipping lines to come to Mauritius, okay? But in the commission, which is chaired by the MEXA, the Association of big manufacturers in Mauritius, there has been the question of coming back with regional feeder vessel, okay? Having regional feeder vessel, which aims, you know, to ease the connectivity between Mauritius and the regional countries, the islands and South Africa, which is also our main exporter. So there's a number of support, you know, that we are trying to give. And one must know also the rising cost of freight, how it happens. It has happened on the next day of pandemic when you have got the oil production being diminished, and this has caused a disbalance between the supply and the demand, and this has been, you know, further deteriorated with the Ukraine war and all, okay? So we know from basic law of economics also that something that goes up will also hopefully come down, okay? And things that also we are hoping to have certain decrease in that particular cost of oil, you know, so that we are not strangulated with what's happening, okay? So there has been quick action being taken. There has been action in the long term. We hope to get more shipping lines here. There is a question of regional feeder vessel, and all this is being discussed. And all this implies big investment also, eh? And the funding at the moment is not that much unlimited, okay? It's quite limited. So there is something, that's why a discussion, consultation is there for budget, and probably will be announced at the next budget about possible solution to alleviate the situation.
Thank you. I mean, that's an interesting point about the issue about trying to get shipping lines to come to this region. Because we were, at UNECA, we were visiting the Indian Ocean Commission on Monday, and this issue of maritime connectivity came up. How can we reduce freight costs within the region? So just out of curiosity, Mr. Bhaktawansingh, I think we need it, a second mic. Are there any discussions among what's happening in terms of regional cooperation among the islands? Because if we go out there and we negotiate on our own with those shipping lines, we have less bargaining power. But if collectively as a region, Comoros, Madagascar, Seychelles, Mauritius, even though we are at different stages of development, if collectively we have a regional approach to our solutions, we could have a bit more bargaining power. So just out of curiosity, this, you know, I do have a script in front of me, but I think let's make this more an open, frank exchange. I mean, at a regional level, because we have SADC, we have COMESA, we have Indian Ocean Commission, how are we having a regional approach to addressing these challenges?
Definitely, this has been discussed previously. I must tell you, the question of regional feeder vessel came in discussion 4 or 5 years back, ITD can tell us. And then the question, the difficulty arise when it comes to the contribution to these countries that have been selected, you know, for such an investment. At that time, it was prior to COVID. I know from my colleagues who look after this particular file, okay, the discussion have also been raised by other parties, including Indian Ocean Commission, and this is a work in progress. The discussion goes on, because at the end of the day is discussing about contribution from each party, and at this moment when it comes to that, it's not necessary you are getting a green light like that, okay? No, Mauritius is very open with regards to have this collective approach, because not thinking only for Mauritius, it's only working for the regions, okay? And you know, at the level of SADC or COMESA, and you know, they have the different, you know, channels of communication and platform where these are being discussed. And in Mauritius, it's International Trade Division who is mandated for this discussion, and they are the voice of Mauritius when it comes to such discussion.
Thank you, Mr. Boktowan Singh. So maybe I think in the very long term, if we want to be ambitious and bold, we should start to think as to whether we can come up with our own shipping companies. Why not? Since we're on the subject of being bold and ambitious. So, Mr. Tang, you're next to me. We have, as we've mentioned, the COVID-19 pandemic, the outbreak of a Russia-Ukraine conflict is bringing to light our vulnerability in terms of sourcing raw materials and exports of finished goods. So in view of your recent experience of tackling such issues, what recommendations would you put forth to government so as to address these challenges, circumvent these destabilizing factors, and maybe other factors out there in doing business? You have the floor today to speak directly with representatives of government. So what would you like to see as an entrepreneur? What recommendations would you like to put forward? Thank you.
As I said previously, I think everything boils down to productivity, value addition. How can we ensure that we add value in a very consistent way? So obviously every disruption will create, will reduce the value created. So what we want to do is to first have a way to tackle that scarcity of disruption caused by raw material. So standardization is one thing. Having less variety, I believe in the fact that when you have less variety, then you can stock more of those, of each of those materials that you use. This is one thing. Second thing, obviously, is to work on the connectivity. I think what you suggested in terms of regional approach to negotiate at a regional scale is a very good one. In order to, I think we should maybe propose the routing, the regional routing of vessels, and maybe have a look at what are the requirements of each island, each country in the region, and negotiate as a package with the shipping companies. And then the third area would be to internalize most of the, have local production of those those material that we require. But obviously this, there's a problem of critical size. If we don't have enough of those requirements, it's very difficult to encourage someone to invest in such a business.
Thank you, Mr. Tang. I think indeed having this also regional collective approach to our solutions and try to get, as a small island, try to get all these small islands maybe a little bit more together. What about you, Ms. Pindial? What would be your recommendations to government?
Well, from my side, I think definitely we'll need to absorb, advance into green and 4.0 technologies. I mean, all the SMEs need to go to that smart factory. Also, upgrade establishment for value chains, increase supply into the domestic market, increase regional and global export. Of course, we need to think about sustainability. We need to think about all the certification, for example, even the small factory need to have their SMETA or their RAP certification up to date. Also, definitely for the automation machineries, which is compulsory nowadays, because we don't need to employ people and call them machinists. No longer, it's finished. We need to call them technicians, give them automized machines so they will come to work with us. Because all the youngsters, they have stopped thinking about going to a factory, going to a textile factory. When we talk about textile factory to our youngsters, they said no, because it's too cheap. Someone can't stand on a machine and work like this. But when we have an automized machine, they're no longer called a small machinist. They will be called technicians. Also, we need to think about eco-friendly system. Definitely our environment, where the SMEs are working, we need to think about a good environment for them. They need to have a very good village, like SME village. We always talk about SME village, not only having incubators set on by government, but also have like a SME village. Give all these people the opportunities of having a nice factory with everything in. When clients are coming, they will definitely work with us. Thank you.
Thank you, Jenny. I think, yes, you have touched on an important point here, which are maybe the perceptions of how perhaps the young generation perceive working in the manufacturing sector. And maybe as well, the less young generation, this perception that we are working in a factory, bad working conditions, long hours, small pay. So, comment est-ce qu'on peut revaloriser le travail dans l'usine? Comme auparavant, on disait comment revaloriser le travail pour l'agriculture. So I think this is an important point that probably didn't come up in our discussions these 2 days. How to attract the younger generation to be interested in the manufacturing sector and maybe leverage on this by embracing digital technologies, put a premium on working in factories. So thank you for that. Also, since yesterday when we were talking about the challengers, I think one challenge that has been mentioned, and it also came up in Justin Bard's intervention this morning, is this perennial problem of labor shortages and lack of skills. I mean, you were talking about embracing digital technologies. You don't learn about this in high school or at university. It requires a different set of skills and perhaps also a different set of intelligence. And I think the lady from HRDC, you have done this interesting survey on what is the obstacles that enterprises face to embrace technologies, and we saw the different set of skills that are required. And this is just as a note that we are making to ourselves, this idea of using expatriate labor to address labor and skill shortages. It's really not, it's putting a band-aid on a gaping wound, because by doing that, we keep getting stuck in having labor-intensive approaches to manufacturing. And we need to make this transition now from labor-intensive to knowledge-intensive, to skills-intensive, and technology-intensive manufacturing. So on the issue of labor, Ms. Pindial, we know that the government is aware of the labor problems that enterprises are facing in the midst of COVID-19. So have you been able to maneuver how have you been able to address that? And what have been some of the lessons learned, and what could be your recommendation to policymakers on this particular issue of labor problems and labor shortages? Thank you.
I will just reply that by projecting a small slide. Thank you. So, how we tackle with this critical situation. So once we informed all our clients that orders have been delayed, we immediately acted by following the government protocols. We start by applying the work access permits for each employee. The process was very quick, and we are happy with that. In fact, in our factory, the security was reinforced in order to remain the place safe for all our workers. We bought thermometers and hand sanitizers and everything. So every day, a private vehicle was assigned to pick up the employees from their residence. The working hours were flexible due to the situation. People from the different departments were willing to help in order to work in an efficient way. Thus, to encourage them, meals were provided by the company. Due to the unavailability of local stores, the different textiles companies were helping each other in order to maintain a certain level of workload. So what was the outcome? We need to have a backup plan for this type of situation. I mean the COVID problem. We cannot always rely on solutions from abroad. We must stick to local as much as possible. Anything can happen. There is no time to lose. Important decisions need to be made in order to encourage the employees to stay themselves and be strong during this situation. So my recommendation is to facilitate companies to bring expatriates to the country, to subsidize, may be taken into consideration to bring these automation, as I've just said, because we need the youngsters to start the business nowadays. So we need to encourage locals to work in the textile factories. We need to encourage these youngsters to set up a platform which helps to answer the issues in the industry in the country. So the workforce, as we said, is always a problem in our island. It's not only during the COVID time, but it has always been here since years. And I think government is not finding a solution on that. Nowadays, we have our expatriates who are evading to go and work in I think, constructions. If, Jan, am I right? They're going there to work. But how can we stop them going from our place? We are like being very, how to say, our hands are underneath. We can't do anything. It's a major problem that Mauritius is facing nowadays. It's labor problem. So government need to set people to facilitate the renewals very quickly, because this is a big problem for all the entrepreneurs in Mauritius, not only in textile, but I think it's a major problem that all people are facing nowadays. So if Ministry of Labour can do necessary to set these solutions, we'll be very happy. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Pindial. It's this note about also what came out just now is also this, not only do we have problems, we are using expatriate labor to address these labor shortages, but now we are also having difficulties to retain them. So perhaps what it implies is that we also need to rethink on as to how we treat them and whether they are being given incentives and opportunities to move up from being, in terms of getting promoted. I mean, all human beings aspire for career advancement and give them an incentive to move up the ladder and move up the chain, but this is another debate, and as you've mentioned, it's it should involve the Ministry of Labour in the discussions. Okay, panelists, thank you very much for all the insights. I think we've touched a little bit on the challengers and what government should perhaps do more. Government is doing a lot, but how we should also, other avenues to explore on to help SMEs address the impact of COVID and also future crises. But I think now we have 20 more minutes to go. Let's perhaps talk a little bit more about the future. Where do we go from here? And one of the policy message that came out, but this is also reflected in the industrial policy and strategic plan, is the need. We know that Mauritius needs to rebrand itself, repositions itself. We need to go into higher value added. We need to move up market. And I think another message that came out is that the textile and apparel industry is really here to stay. We are not going to get out of it completely. And it will not probably be wise for us to get out of it completely. Yesterday I presented a few of the recommendations that we did, a study that UNDP and UNECA did looking at the opportunities for the manufacturing sector under the AFCFTA. And one recommendation that came out of this report is that the textile and clothing industry should be among the 4 key sectors that Mauritius should continue to develop besides pharmaceutical, foodstuffs, and the 4th one, I think, is jewelry. Because the textile, if we look at the figures, you find that we found that the global textile and apparel industry is a fast-growing industry. It's been despite COVID, the forecast is that it will continue to grow in the future. So, Dr. Irana, finally we come to you, and thanks this morning for your entertaining presentation. So, you are the chairperson of a textile and clothing subcommittee of the Industrial Policy and Strategic Plan. Please tell us what is your vision for this sector? In what direction do you foresee the sector should focus on so as to bring quick wins to operators, but also what is your medium and long-term vision for the industry? Thank you.
So, good afternoon, everyone. I think the industry need to look at new markets, emerging markets, because with COVID and with what's happening around the world, they are bound to have changes in terms of consumer behavior, in terms of consumer demands. We still have to wear good clothing and good design style, but it will be in a sort of slow fashion. Eastern Europe is adopting that, the slow fashion. We've heard of fast fashion, but slow fashion is customers looking to keep hold of whatever they purchase for longer. So they don't go off the shelf and buy every time. So they keep that. There's a sentimental value to that, whatever they're purchasing. And this is something that Eastern Europe is doing. Why they're adopting this is because they're thinking about recycle, they're thinking about the environment, they're thinking of reducing the consumption of whatever they're using in terms of everything, in terms of products, in terms of clothing. So this is something that the industry can look here. Give high value added products, clothing, garments that customers will retain longer, which will have higher price. This is something that SMEs can look into, because large companies will be difficult to adapt that. But I see that this is something that we need to adapt. Also, the industry need to see different technologies that is easy. We're talking about these updated, latest technologies. I mean, be realistic. This will cost a lot of money, and economic situation at the moment, will the government be able to meet that? There are priority areas, maybe in health, in other sectors, maybe in agriculture. So we have to think of what is a technology, small technology, that we can work together with small countries, like you're saying, regional countries. This is something that need to be pursued. We are thinking as isolation, as a small country. It's good that we think about the small island developments around us that can be pulled together and work something in terms of technology sharing, technology transfer of knowledge. This is something that the industry needs to share. If we can't grow, we can't expand as a small company, this is something that we can look into and proceed. Don't think as isolation as an industry. So this is I think this will be the focus in my discussion with the committees in terms of the future of the industry.
Thank you, Dr. Irana. But also in your role as director of Fashion and Design Institute, how do you anticipate the role of your institution in offering a unique value proposition to the textile and clothing operators? A tough question.
Yes, we have already, it's not a tough question because once the pandemic has, we had to adapt to whatever because we have students and our program is not like theoretical, it's mostly hands-on, practical. So we had to change our methods of teaching, how the students are learning, where they are learning at home, how they are setting studio base at home, where they can do their practicals and they send us what they are doing via videos online. So we had to do the approach. Now to answer your question about the industry. Since the pandemic, we are embarked on short courses, demand-driven courses with HRDC, where people want to be reskilling to adapt to new sectors. So we had launched around 12 short courses via HRDC. We have been approached by the Commonwealth of Learning, where we have been funded to launch 12 another course online, which reply to whatever the industry is on. So there will be courses like pattern drafting, garment technologies. So these are courses that our main focus pre-pandemic situation was 3 years, 2 years degree courses or diploma courses. After the pandemic, we have launched many short courses so that everyone can fit in and can see themselves, can actually upgrade their skills and also reply to the demand of the industry. So this is what we are offering, professional courses for the company in knitting, weaving. We are purchasing new equipment. This was our budget. We received that for any other technology that's needed that is similar to the industry in small scale. And this is what we are replicating at the moment at FTI. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Irana. What I like also about your presentation this morning is this whole notion of creativity. If we are going to upscale in the textile and apparel industry, go up market, position ourselves in the high fashion, high-end market, we will need over time to build a nation of creative and imaginative thinkers. A hub in the region, you're saying. So that's the goal. We want to leave some space for question and answers, and we do want to wrap up on time today. Mr. Tang, real estate in the real estate, they say location, location, location. I think perhaps in the Mauritian manufacturing sector, we may want to say innovate, innovate, and innovate. But how to do it? So we've heard a lot that we need to move towards Industry 4.0, Industry 5.0. Not too sure I know what is Industry 5.0, but maybe you can tell us. So please tell us a bit about what is Industry 5.0, how is it different from Industry 4.0, but also what do you think, based on your experience, what are the hurdles that are being encountered by enterprises, and what are some of the possible solutions that could be worked upon towards initiating and successfully implementing Industry 4.0. So we have not implemented Industry 4.0 yet, but we are talking of Industry 5.0, so that's a bit worrying. Thank you.
Before we talk about Industry 4.0 or 5.0, I would like to maybe put emphasis on something. We have always heard about moving towards higher value-added products, and personally I think this is a wrong concept. We should not focus on products that have higher value, but products that enable our employees to create more value. It is probably more interesting to have workers producing a t-shirt that costs $2, but on each t-shirt you're earning 10 cents, but you're producing maybe 50 times more than a very complicated garment. And the difference between these two paths is the first one, which is the mass production, you can invest in technologies that allow you to automate the production. That will bring down your percentage of labor costs in each product. Whereas the higher end product, you can't reduce the labor cost because those manual operations can't be automated. And maybe the volume doesn't allow you to automate. So this is, I think, is very, very important concept that we need to get right in the national policy. It's not about increasing the value of the product, but increasing the value per employee, whatever the product. And I would say that the product has to be scalable. We must be able to mass produce it, because that's the only way to compensate for the higher labor cost. Okay, so this is, I think, one very important point to clarify before I talk about the technology. For me, technology is just a tool to allow us to increase our productivity. So obviously, yeah, it's sometimes quite frightening. What is Industry 4? What is Industry 5.0? But I think it all starts with the top level. Is the CEO aware about those challenges, how to address them? So before we invest in any piece of equipment, I think we need to think about the structure of the company, what are the skills that we require, how do we recruit those talents, how do we train our people, how do we prepare for the infrastructure, because today an equipment doesn't come alone, it requires network, it requires servers, it requires a lot of other peripheral technologies. So I think where people get it wrong is they just think that equipment as being a standalone piece of equipment, whereas it requires a whole ecosystem to make it perform. Be it in terms of human resource, in terms of skills, in terms of infrastructure. So I think last time when I made a presentation on Industry 4.0, I sum it up into something which is quite simple to understand. In fact, when you start to work on automation, you can buy most of the equipment off the shelf. As you move towards Industry 4, Industry 5, these are all the solutions that you need to create in-house. So you need the skills inside your company to be able to work on this. Programmers, coders, engineers, automation engineers in various fields to be able to address those things. Because when you want to get the solution that is going to allow you to differentiate yourself, to have that competitive edge, you need to create that solution. It is not available as a turnkey project.
A very important point, Dr. Tang, because we talk about innovation and innovation, but I think what we should not have in mind is us importing a piece of machinery that embodies the technology and we're just going to copy it. I think what we also want to promote is locally grown solutions to our problems, and therefore local innovation, innovating on the spot I don't want to say factory, at the manufacturing site. But then we also need a nation of engineers and innovators. So this is another part of the debate. But thank you. But I really like this idea that you put forward, that we talk about creating value, but it's not necessarily products of higher value, but how can we also add more value on existing products? I think that's what you're trying to say.
No, I say.
Or value per employee.
Per employee.
Value per employee. Okay. We are running a bit short of time. We have touched on a few issues. But last but not least, and a topic which is also dear to our hearts at the UN, and also in the context of climate change, it's also this whole necessity to be sustainable. And we are talking about environmental sustainability. It came up in your presentation, and I think it is also well embodied in the industrial policy and strategic plan. We need to increase the manufacturing value added. Even in the Southern African context, we have to industrialize, but it cannot just be any type of industrialization and manufacturing development. We need to make this transition towards green. Now, out of curiosity, Dr. Tang, I've heard that you have a big interest in the adoption of renewable technologies and renewable energies. I mean, if you are an entrepreneur and the government tells you, you know, Mr. Tang, you need to go green, and as an entrepreneur, you're a profit maker, right? So what will be your incentives to go green as an entrepreneur? I mean, of course, you can say, I want to save the planet, but as a profit maker, you're facing all these challenges. You have COVID, you have Russian, you have... All the costs are rising, and now we are telling you at the UN, and the government is saying, but now, on top of that, we need to go green. And going green is not cheap, because you have to change the technology that you're using. You have to go towards renewable energy, right? So speaking as an entrepreneur, what would be your incentives to go green? Thank you.
So first of all, I can assure you that we haven't got any incentive coming from the government or from the bank to invest into renewable energy or other energy efficiency project. We have done everything by ourselves, and because there is a return on investment. For example, the solar PV that we are currently installing has a return on investment of around 7 years. But if we think that the oil prices, the electricity price is going to increase, our payback will be faster. So it's true that investing in renewable energy costs a lot, but we have the choice among all the various technologies to choose the ones that really gives us a reasonable payback period. And sometimes it's a question of timing also. If you look at the cost of solar PV, it has like continuously, the cost per watt has continuously decreased. So when we built our factory in 2007, the new factory, we already prepared the roof to be able to install those panels on it. So today we're installing without any additional costs for the fixation, So it's about having a long-term vision and waiting for the right moment to invest in those technologies. I'm sure that in the coming years we will see another new technology that will come and where the costs will be reasonable enough for us to invest and do that transformation.
Thank you, Mr. Teng. I don't know whether Ms. Pindia also wants to compliment. And we are also a bit curious to know about eco-labeling. It's not a new concept. It's been around. But do we see it a lot in Mauritius, on Mauritian products? Are we using it a lot, eco-labeling products? Are we making efforts to perhaps target the higher-end customers in Europe that has an interest in environmentally sustainable products? Thank you.
In fact, yes, there are a lot of ecologic products that we're using nowadays, but I don't know whether Artemis has already started doing that. Maybe we need to contact Mr. Kendall, but we are importing some fabrics from China. We're importing some fabrics from China, and we are producing to deliver to US. So this is new for us. So from my side, what we are doing is trying to tackle with different type of fabrics, different type of products, giving some added values. Because if we continue on saying, okay, we are doing only the same fabrications, then definitely, competitively, we are lost. Definitely we need to change now, change our mindset of producing, change completely to bio, change the fabrication itself, change the way of doing makeup. For example, nowadays we are seeing machines which is solidifying the panels, then it's the robots who are taking the panels and making the garment. It's completely different from even, we can't even think about it. But yes, there are others who are doing it. But that's where we need to go. It's very difficult, it's cost a huge, which is not easy for us, but in terms of materials, we need to think about it and change completely to that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Pindial. I think perhaps the best way to put it is to know that I think the cost of not going green over time is going to rise. And And that could be the bottom line. The cost of not going green may rise over time. And we've heard from you that perhaps this is an area where more still needs to be done in terms of government support to help SMEs and enterprises make this transition towards cleaner production methods and more sustainable products. Ladies and gentlemen, I think it's important that we open the floor for Q&A. I hope there are some mics going around. Happy to take questions for the next 5 minutes. Yes, the gentleman over there, thank you. If you could also introduce yourself, thank you.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Navid. I'm the CFO of Shell Textile. So I had one question because I was listening to especially a lot to Mr. Kendall because of his presentation and what he was sharing. So one interesting point which you said is about we should add value to employees and means create more value to the employees instead of only focusing purely about adding value to products. Yeah. But I think most, I'm talking for Shell Textile overall, most today we focus a lot about adding more and more creativity and value to our customers, which is but you said that this also is important in the sense that even if you don't make a huge margin out of it, but with volume, you can still make it profitable and sustainable. So with all the challenges, I don't know much about the shirt on your side. So do you think you can, let's say, have or guarantee enough volume to be able to sustain that low margin profile that you are talking?
Maybe I'm going to clarify what I was meaning. Let's take the example of a very complicated garment, and you need a certain number of employees, and you are able to make 100 pieces per day. You are going to sell it at $10, and you are making maybe, I don't know, 50 cents per garment. The other situation is, because it's a simple garment, you can invest in automation, you can invest into a system where you are not making 100 pieces, you are making 1,000. Maybe what you can earn per piece is even less than that, but probably you're going to earn on the long term more on the basics, on this, especially when you have the possibility to further automate because you have that volume. On that 100 pieces, you will never be able to invest into equipment that will allow you to automate it. So the question is, because all your employees, as you have a certain number of employees in this scenario and that scenario, you're going to create wealth for the company. But in one scenario, they can create wealth with their pair of hands because everything is manual and it's fashion. And on the other side, everything is automated. On top of your employees, they are enhanced by the machines that you're going to give them. They are going to be 2 times, 3 times, 4 times more productive. And you can continuously invest into that kind of automation. So on the long term, I believe this is the better strategy for Mauritius, for the textile sector, than going to a high market where you're selling the product very expensive, $10 a piece. I believe more in the $2 a piece model.
Thank you for the clarification. I think it's a question of strategy. Because let's say in our case as Shell Textile, it has been more about this the other way around. Because today, of course, we have a lot of grade A, grade A plus customers who pays for that. They pay for this extra complexity, automation, added sustainability. They can pay you a few dollars for that. So it's a question of strategy. But I think it's a good point. Probably I will go and share that with my CEOs, probably about what you shared. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions, please? Among the private sector, in the textile and apparel industry, I mean, entrepreneurs, do you meet on a regular basis? Do you exchange sometimes experiences and lessons learned? Do you sometimes consult with each other and try to adopt a collective approach when you go to government to negotiate on whatever? Yes, okay. Because we talk about coordination, improving coordination among ministries, but sometimes we also forget that we have to improve coordination within the private sector. Mr. Girish, you wanted to make a comment?
Yes, so that's why, in Mauritius, you have a couple of associations. I've encouraged also, smaller association. I think the Vice President of SME Chamber is present here, to network among themselves and to share intelligence that they are getting from the market. And also with regard to the technologies they are applying in order to be successful. As long as we don't have the volume trade with Mauritius, Mauritius will be in difficulty. There's a certain volume that need to be traded with Mauritius. And, coming to the question of the strategy that Tang was mentioning, with regards to adoption of technology, no. When we are adopting technology, it's also implied there's a cost if there is downtime. The technology that you're applying will imply much more production. I don't know about the quality we are stating with or with embellishment or with less embellishment or what we are talking. But more productivity means more quantity of products, and more quantity of products is also about which segment of the market you're looking for and what competition is there. So if the strategy of the enterprise is going regional at the moment, okay, and in the region also they have different purchasing power, which is not the same purchasing power that you have in Europe. The purchasing power of South Africa is different. The cost you sell with South Africa is different. So hence, appropriate strategy that completely adhere to what the factory will be doing in terms from its market up to its production. But definitely, the reliance on hence now became maybe more complicated for Mauritius. The reliance should be more and more on technology. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. But the point that we are also trying to make is that I think sometimes the entrepreneurs must know when to collaborate to compete and when, what I'm trying to say. And I just wanted to make this note that, I guess the Mauritian associations are members of a SADC Business Council. And one thing that we would like also to encourage and promote is exchanges among MSMEs in the Southern African region. Making this transition of also now is starting to think in terms of regional collaboration and making this transition. Before we end the panel, I would like to give each one of you, there's another question? Oui. S'il vous plaît. Please introduce yourself. Thank you.
Hi, Adrian Espitalier Noel, WorldNets. A few points. I don't know whether they are advancements to industry or advancements in communication between industry and government. One of the biggest issues is understanding the communication portals available. We do have associations of private sector. We do meet. We have representatives that take our suggestions to the deciding parties. The returns are often cloudy as far as availability of funding, opportunity, and other. Unless a company goes and individually fights his own fight, it seems that as an association level, there's minimal returns. So the request would be that should government have a clear intention of supporting the industry, which has been around for so long, that their position be made clear, whether it's in terms of land availability for industrial zones, funds available for raw materials, training, transportation. I mean, the list is massive. There's indirect industries that support the textiles here, which are extremely important. Some of them are dwindling to nothing because we are being forced to go find raw materials elsewhere or use in-house printing. Some of these industries employ a lot of people, and if they're not getting the help that we are also asking for, this can create problems. So there's an indirect group of industries that is very important to us that needs to have that support, and we often don't see them here in these forums. So for us that is also very important. Providing subsidies to SMEs like the smaller factories to maybe do a lesser level of automation. But there are some levels like garment movers or printing facilities and items that are not readily available to them, that if they are given those machinery, they can improve their own output and then become more attractive or even more cost effective. Sourcing of raw materials. This is the biggest issue Mauritius has since we are in the middle of the Indian Ocean. We suffer from cyclones 4 months out of the year. There's now a shortage of ships coming from Asia or India. So these are now exacerbated by the fact that either we have not become sufficiently attractive to the shipping lines, or the time that is being given to us by our own clients is being reduced because whether it's fast fashion or slow fashion, they want delivery tomorrow. Slow fashion exists in the sense that it's a higher quality. If today I wear this shirt that I bought 5 years ago, it's because it's made of a thicker fabric and it probably has a thicker sewing thread, and therefore it lasts 10 years compared to fast fashion, which is made of a very thin fabric with thinner sewing thread, and therefore after 6 months I need to go back to a Zara or a Walmart and buy another one. So the raw materials is a key point for us. Some of us are trying to buy yarns for knitting so far in advance that by the time they reach us, then they're no longer relevant to the market. Or the amount that we require cannot be manufactured or shipped fast enough to deliver an order in time. So we've discussed, again, at association level, how could we solve these issues? Without the help of a government entity to provide facilities for this, either it's holding raw materials to a certain extent for the smaller companies, whether it's tapes or yarns for making draw cords. I mean, you name it. The list is inexhaustive. It's massive. And some of these raw materials are not readily available. Plastics for buttons, printing inks for printing facilities. Some of the printing facilities are small that make little tags. So again, that kind of support is extremely important, and we haven't seemed to touch on that. And the national policy dialogue needs to be surrounded about what does the industry need. And I don't mean to be rude, Doctor, of your fashion, is the fact that the students are getting input from what's around in the fashion industry on the web that can be found. Some of the input that's required is how do we go find it? If we could create a department in that institute that is concentrated on sourcing, how do we educate our own people to go find the manufacturers, to go find the cheaper or the faster source of raw materials? Again, it's just a suggestion, but it's not only just how pretty is it or how added value you said, madam. A lot of these other things need to be addressed, and I believe that was missing from the conversation. There are other aspects to attracting young people to our business, which is not just manufacturing. We have legal needs, we have accounting needs, we have shipping needs, we have human resource needs, hospitality. Don't forget, some of us who are employing foreign labor, we are renting these dormitories, or we have our own dormitories. These are mini hotels. These are, I mean, quite literally. And if we're not properly trained in how to maintain them, then the criticism we're going to get from overseas for how we house and how we maintain our foreign labor is going to be massive. The criticism will be overwhelming even. So that kind of training is also required. So to attract younger people to our business, there's such a wide field of what actually textiles is. It's a colorful salad bowl of all sorts of different industries. And that is important that we advertise that. So, and my last point is maybe engineering training as far as not only production, but quality control. These are also items that maybe the Institute of Technology can provide more input to young people as to what is available in our industry. We don't just take people that are university leavers or high school diplomas. We also need people with higher education, with engineering and quality of input. So sorry, I had a list and I felt I had to mention it, but these things are absolutely of a high importance, and if the government doesn't provide us with a forum to continuously talk about these things, the industry will not survive. The industry will absolutely not survive. It is absolutely important that we touch on every single item and that a budget be supplied to different institutions to provide that support, whether it's a social training system or a private entity, but those need to be addressed in a very specific manner. Thank you for your time.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur Hospitalier-Noël. Thank you very much for those insights. That's precisely why we are here, to have this dialogue between the public and the private sector, and a dialogue that obviously should continue after we leave this room today. You've enumerated a list of issues, but it's true that what didn't come out perhaps during these 2 days is this aspect of the servicification of manufacturing, that we cannot have an efficient manufacturing sector without an efficient services sector. So, for instance, that's why under the AFCFTA and those trade agreements, we talk not only about trade in goods, but we talk about trade in services, because they go together. And the advantage of Mauritius is that we do have this efficient services sector, which is missing in many other African countries. But this is a very good point to also think about attracting, when we talk about attracting people to the manufacturing sector, the young, but also to keep the services sector alive and vibrant and dynamic and efficient. And you have touched upon this need to have forums of this type to keep the dialogue going between the public and private sectors. And of course, when we talk about what government is doing, whether it is Mauritius or any other country, the support that government provides to the private sector is the client. There is the intermediate client, it is the private sector, and the final client of the buyers. But the private sector is the client of a government, and it is always, of course, good to involve the private sector in this search for solutions, even in designing the support schemes, to take into account to ask them, what are their needs, what do you want from us, and to have this public-private dialogue. So we hope that this dialogue indeed will continue. Before we end, I just wanted to ask each panelist to say in 1 minute something that you really want to say, but that you have not been able to say. So, there is another question, so this is good.
Give the mic to. Give the mic.
The mic.
C'est bon? Deux questions, je vais le faire en français, c'est mieux pour moi.
Oui.
Deux questions. Qu'est-ce qu'on va faire pour les gens qui ne sont plus dans les dortoirs? Ceux qui se sont sauvés, ça c'est un problème que nous avons tous. Donc, Mme Viviane a parlé de ça tout à l'heure. Et deuxième, qu'est-ce qui va devenir de la SADC bientôt? Sachant qu'il n'y a plus d'usines qui fabriquent du tissu en coton ni en polyester à l'île Maurice. On fait du GAC, du chêne et trame, donc il n'y a pas de woven. Si on parle de l'Afrique du Sud, de l'Afrique, qu'est-ce qui va advenir à la SADC bientôt? Je vous laisse répondre.
SADC, tu parles Non.
No, the chair does not take questions. The questions are for the panelists. Non, mais il y a Madame Nathalie qui est juste à côté de vous, du ministère des Affaires étrangères et du Commerce, qui pourra répondre à cette question.
Non, moi je veux réagir sur les points qui ont été mentionnés par M. Noël. He made some good points, and these points are regularly on table of discussion. And in fact, the solution is not that easy. That's why, no one can come forward and bring a solution. But I must say that so much of that discussion and knowing the challenges that the industry is facing in general, because now we go a bit on the micro challenges, like being mentioned right now, but the challenges brought something interesting in quest of this dynamic dialogue that we are talking. The last budget already announced the setup of economic commissions with the participation, one coordination committee chaired by FS that will go through the minister, with the participation of public and private. There are 4 commissions and many of these points that you raise are being addressed in it. A commission on export development for goods, a commission for export development for services, a commission for competitiveness, productivity, and capacity building, a commission on sectoral development. And each commission is having under it a number of working groups with representative of private, public participation. And there are also a number of participations, you know, with experts that we feel should be present in it. Discussion is going, and that hopefully will have to come what's finally, you know, accepted by the Minister of Finance, will, after discussion with Ministry of Finance, sorry, become budget proposals and budget announcement afterwards. It's not at all that much easy, because, you know, from perspective of Mauritius, we have a number of challenges, being far from the market, having an issue with labor, having an issue with imports of raw materials, and having an issue now with the frequency of the vessel, the freight. There are so many issues which is involved. But if there's one thing is, no one wants, you know, the industry to disappear. We want to sustain the development of the industry. The issues that come in regard the fabric now, which is not available in the regions, you know, that we have to import from elsewhere, even raised with a CFTA. So there are a number of issues, okay, which is quite pertinent. I don't think anyone here, neither ITD, can give a reply or what could be the solution. But the points are relevant, pertinent, and taken at different levels. Now you know also at the different levels, we have a number of bodies. For the land, there are Landscope, Ministry of Labor. There are many bodies working, okay, on particular aspects with regards to issues raised by you about manufacturing. But what also is important, in the beginning itself, in the vision itself, all authorities, all government vision is that we believe in industry, we believe in manufacturing, we believe that this will remain an engine of growth, and what support could be given to it with regards to all these difficulties that we are facing. You know, it's about a new ecosystem which is being built, attracting our youngsters to come to factory, coming out from a system that we are having, how to include into that system enough technical education. We are forming engineers, but engineers are not coming to the industry. We are forming technical people. They are not coming back to the industry. What is there? What type of industry we need to have to attract them? You know, when we were kids, we were even visiting sugar factory. Now, when I ask my daughters, they never visited the textile factory. Okay? The people of Artinich opened up the factory for visit, even for students and all. And I was encouraging that such aspect also be included. Aspect of having, you know, sort of training or posting after a certain time of your studies in factories, all that will help to develop this particular culture. Now, coming on top to that, cette culture d'entrepreneur même, this is another challenge. Are we more entrepreneur prone? So there are a number of challenges that should be seen from a holistic perspective, addressed definitely, but you are all right on the point that you have raised, and obviously these points have never been ignored. These points are being taken in the dialogue, in the commissions, in the multiple meetings that is there. Of course, they are deciding body. The fund comes from Ministry of Finance. The discussion goes to the level of FS and to higher level. Thank you.
Thank you, Girish. Thank you, everybody. I think so. We are going to wrap up, but before I summarize, I attempt to summarize the main messages coming out of this panel. 1 minute to each one of you to say your final thoughts. Thank you.
For me, running industry is not a big deal because we've been doing this for years. All we need is money, people, and good machineries. So if you have all these, definitely we'll go on. Something which is very important also is also school for textile. We do have FDI, we do have University of Mauritius, but we need a school of textile to train people because we need like QCs, we need like pattern makers, we need so many people in factories. So all these people can be employed. But if we have a good mentor, like Mr. Kendall, I always say, we'll definitely go for it. Thank you.
Yes, for me, I will take up what from Wellnitz, the late gentleman has mentioned to us. We need feedback from the industry because we don't know what you need until you tell us. We send students to you for placement every year. We have students working at the moment as full-time employee. So we need feedback. From that feedback, then we can integrate whatever your requirement in our program. And this is very important because until you communicate with us what your requirement, we won't be able to answer that. So if you require whatever, then we have justification to ask for fund in our budget to set up anything that you require. Be it, as you're saying, the pattern makers and all that, we have to have justification for what is your requirement, what industry requires. And this is very important. We've been working with the industry for the past 12 years, and we are answering to their needs in terms of employees for designers, fashion merchandisers, product developers, but we need also another feedback in terms of what sort of program that you require, that you need from us. Thank you.
For me, I would say the main thing that I would like to re-emphasize is the fact that from a perspective that we are keeping the industry in Mauritius, the textile industry in Mauritius, we need to be aware that as our labor costs continue to increase and the level of knowledge of our workforce increases, we have to adapt to that. That means we have to choose carefully the type of product that are suitable for Mauritius production and also adapt the production to make the job attractive for the younger generations to join the sector. So I think these are two main challenges that I would like to highlight.
For me, I believe in industry for many reasons. And I believe that we need to give more visibility to successful models. We listened during the day about a model being explained by his CEO about the improvement in its productivity, the improvement, the innovation being brought, and how it is moving ahead. So I believe this model should be given more visibility so that it can be also emulated and adapted in other factories. This is one. Second, we know very well our universities are forming a quantity of engineers. We are forming a quantity of technical peoples, you know. We should not forget l'adage. Engineer needs to be near the engines. We have to develop this sort of channel that they are here to work in industry, of course, in the right environment that they are looking for. And the third thing for me, a quantity of entrepreneurs has been behind the making of the industry of Mauritius. So we need a quantity, we need for this new generation another quantity of quality entrepreneurs that are risk takers, that are willing to make things happen, that are really willing to bring change. The ecosystem need to be constructed again, and this could not be done alone. All parties together can construct this new ecosystem, me and you. So that's my final word.
Thank you, panelists. So it's hard to summarize this session. It was a great session with lots of thoughts and good questions. But if I were to summarize it in 5 points, the 5 main messages, I think we've heard that we know that Mauritius has to accelerate the transition from labor-intensive to knowledge-intensive, technology-intensive industry. And on this journey, we need to look at what are some of the solutions regarding skills shortages. If we continue with expatriate labor, why is it that expatriate labor is also leaving? How can we retain them? How can we démystifier le secteur manufacturier aux jeunes and attract more young people to the sector? What are perhaps some of the bold reforms to be done in our education system so that we become a nation of creative, imaginative thinkers and innovators? When we talk about innovation, what do we mean? How can we encourage locally grown innovation, innovation at the factory, innovation how to come up with this ecosystem of innovation, who should be the main actors. But for me, really, the final thought is that open, frank exchanges between the government and the private sector is key. Continuous public-private dialogue, and really involving the private sector, seeing the private sector as a client, involving them in the design of all these support schemes and eliciting feedback. On this note, ladies and gentlemen, we really hope that after we leave, the dialogue will continue, and we hope that at UNECA we will be able to do our modest part on this long journey. Good luck, everyone. Thank you very much.
I would like to invite Dr. Duman for him to give his to talk on proposal for the way forward. Dr. Duman is the principal industrial analyst at the Ministry of Industrial Development, SMEs and Cooperatives. Thank you, Dr. Duman.
Good afternoon. The task is not easy, but we'll try to make a summary of what has happened yesterday, and to sort out what are the proposals which have come from yesterday's discussion. You will recall that in the morning yesterday we had some presentations on the perspective of the private sector. We had the official ceremony where there was some, the importance of international organizations was emphasized. And then there was mentioned during discussions about the opportunities offered by the AFCTA, PTAs, and then the incentives provided by organizations like EDB, SME Mauritius, IFCM, which is very important, and then HRDC. And then in the afternoon yesterday, we had a very good panel discussion where most of the members shared their deep thoughts on the future of the manufacturing sector. In short, we have seen that, you'll see on the table that some of the discussions have revolved around skills, shortage of labor, inadequate technical skills, skills mismatch, lack of entrepreneurial attitude, and then inadequate training of employees. And some of the recommendations, which have to be reformulated, of course, in terms of proposal and then this, budget proposal even, to assist industrialists to coordinate with relevant educational and training institutions to fill the gap in skill development, conduct awareness campaign to encourage youngsters to join the sector, and then HRDC scheme to promote these schemes among the entrepreneurs. There have been also talk about limited access to finance, and I think the incentives provided by EDB, SME Mauritius, and IFCM have come at the opportune time. Mention also about low productivity by NPCC, and there is a need to facilitate technology uptake to enhance productivity and move forward in high value added products. This is also very important. There was been mention also about constraint on difficulty of Mauritius products in satisfying rules of origin. We have to support operators to meet these rules, and then promote sourcing of raw materials from the African region to optimize provisions under FTAs, SADC and COMESA. During the presentations, there were the observation that the opportunities under FTAs was not fully tapped, so there should be some market intelligence and support operators to take advantage of these FTAs. Difficulty in moving towards non-traditional markets, that's what we have to encourage campaigns, promotional campaigns in non-traditional markets, and then there's a need to optimize UN framework. And yesterday there was a mention from the UN representative that there's a lot of work which is being done. We have to connect with the UN framework. Lack of R&D, I think this has been obvious from the presentation of many people. To upgrade technology uptake and then adopt AI. There's been mention also about the constraint that we are far from the international buyers. We have to enhance our maritime and sea connectivity and then provide logistic support to operators. And then finally, mention also about the lack of support for sustainable, inclusive local production. We have to sensitize operators to take advantage of all schemes and support provided. these are in brief some of the constraints and then the recommendations of which have come out from this session yesterday. With regards to today's session, which has been very lively, and we thank the various speakers, there has been again, they have talked about the skills, labor shortage, and young generation is reluctant to join the sector. There is a recommendation that we think of how we treat them. Incentives, we have to provide incentives and opportunities to them to move up the career path. And then factories should adapt the factories should adapt to the standard of living of employees. A very important observation made. Logistic, rising cost, freight, irregular shipping frequencies, less flights. Clients are looking for new sources of supply closer to their markets. The proposals are regional collective approach from institutions, regional feeder vessels to east connectivity, increase port efficiencies, which is very important to improve delivery lead time, and then tap new markets in South Africa. We have to diversify from our traditional markets, France and USA, and go for other countries in South Africa. Constraint of sourcing of raw materials, increase in price of raw materials, delay in procuring raw materials. And the recommendations that we should keep a buffer stock of raw material, internalize product, create our own label and accessories and use of RPA. An important aspect of technology innovation, I think this is, there's a consensus around it. Slow implementation of Industry 4.0, adoption of ERP system. We should provide support to encourage the adoption of new and technology. Financial incentives, of course, this is linked to the new IFCM scheme. We have to see whether this scheme works with these textile companies. And then the public and private sector should work together to come up with product innovation, design and facilitate structural change to tap other non-traditional markets and attract potential garment markets. Adoption of sustainable production, I think this has been mentioned since yesterday morning, sustainable production. Clients are demanding. It's very important that we consider this aspect. We have to boost growth, but as there is a need to adopt sustainability, circular economy, zero waste, reduce carbon footprint, green energy, and then we should give incentive to the operators. Finally, changing consumption pattern. There's a demand for higher value added product, and consumers are opting for longer life of products. We should focus, I think, suggestion of Mr. Kendall, focus on mass production, automate production lines so as to reduce costs, and then increase in value per employee rather than producing high-end product. And then the last two comments made from the participants is that there should be a constant dialogue with operators. We have taken note of this, and then about the SADC issue, which Mr. from Textiles mentioned about the SADC issues. Of course, as Girish has mentioned, this issue is being taken up in several commissions, and they will ensure that there is something which is coming out from these the results. So these are in brief, and I've gone quickly on the recommendations of the today's session. These will be formulated in terms of proposals or even budget proposals, and with the collaboration of UNECA, they will produce an outcome document, and maybe some of the presentations will be shared with all the participants. To conclude, I wish to thank UNECA, our Honorable Minister, for his inspiration behind this policy dialogue. Our Madam Permanent Secretary, who has been very active in making things happen, the administrative staff, Mr. Sibu and Mrs. Asia, and then the DOI, Mr. Paul and his team, Mr. Barroze, Mrs. Karim, and all the analysts and senior analysts who have contributed in the reports. They are still working out the notes. You will get more detailed notes later on. Our IT people, Mr. Bala and Mr. Kadir and Mr. Muzamil, the hotel, and then all the participants, all the enterprises, all the resource persons who have been very kind enough to participate and make this event a success. I think in the minister's intervention yesterday, he says that he would see that the recommendations of this workshop is implemented. I think we have to see that this vision is achieved. Thank you very much.
Very much, Mr. Rishiduman. My closing remarks would more or less reinforce what you have just said. Mrs. Bibi Fatwa Abdul Rahman Ahmed, Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Industrial Development, SMEs and Cooperatives, senior government officials of the Republic of Mauritius, representatives of the private sector and industry, members of the media, ladies and gentlemen. We have come to the end of a productive two-day dialogue. Sorry, I'm trying to, it's not okay. We have come to the end of a productive two-day dialogue on the manufacturing sector in Mauritius, with the second day dedicated to the textile and clothing subsector, an important pillar of the manufacturing sector of the country. We were most honored to have been ably guided by the Honorable Sumil Dutbola, Minister of Industrial Development, SMEs and Cooperatives, through his well-articulated keynote address. Through his ministry, under his able leadership, several policy strategies and measures have been put in place to foster the development of the manufacturing sector in the country. The Industrial Policy and Strategic Plan, IPSP, which provides an important instrument for driving the sector, is a case in point. It is heartening to note that more than 50% of the recommendations of the government's commitment recommendations put forward in the document are being implemented. This is a clear demonstration of the government's commitment to give the needed boost to this very important sector of the economy. The dialogue, which provided a space for key public and private policymakers and operators in the manufacturing sector in Mauritius to interact, was characterized by frank and rich exchanges geared towards charting the way forward towards revamping the sector, which was instrumental to the economic miracle of the country in the 80s. The deliberations, which were informed by presentations and panel discussions involving key stakeholders, paid due regard to the internal challenges of the sector and subsector are faced with, as well as current global challenges, such as the COVID-19 pandemic and the war in Europe. It also took into account new opportunities presented by the fourth industrial revolution, Industry 4.0, and the advent of the African Continental Free Trade Area. In terms of key takeaways, the following are worth noting. Some of these are embodied in the presentation that was just made by Mr. Dumon. The manufacturing sector, while not as competitive as before, is still a force to be reckoned with in terms of its contribution to gross value addition and employment. However, there is a need for its transformation to take into account new realities at the national, regional, and global levels for the sector to gain higher levels of productivity and enhance its standing as an important driver of economic growth and diversification. To that end, the following are pertinent. It is important to appreciate that Mauritius, as a country itself, is a brand. However, there is a need for constant reinvention to remain relevant and competitive. A change of mindset and attitude will go a long way in ensuring that the sector is injected with new vigor and innovativeness. Attracting young people to the industry is key. There is a need to increase the space for public-private dialogue to understand the needs and challenges of industry with a view to coming up with collective solutions that would ensure the effectiveness of interventions and guide future decisions and actions. Research and development, skills upgrading, and leveraging new technology and innovation are imperative for the sector to thrive and become more competitive. There is a need to take advantage of the digitalization wave to enhance productivity in all sectors and to attract talent from other countries. The transformation of the manufacturing sector should take due regard of the need to modernize the service sector to keep it vibrant in view of its role in trade and distribution of supplies and goods. There is also a need to take advantage of the AFCFTA in terms of the large market size it could offer. This would provide the country with the opportunity to build regional value chains linked to global value chains. Sustainability in all its forms, encompassing economic, social, and environmental dimensions, should guide transformation in the sector to not only contribute to the SDGs that the country has signed up to, but to do business in a smart way, noting the recent changes in customer preferences. I know that given the rich discussions we've had over the past 2 days, there are many more pertinent takeaways I have not touched on. However, I am sure that the Secretariat has taken due note of all your contributions, which will be reflected in the report of the dialogue. I believe that given the importance attached to reviving the sector at the highest level of government and the active engagement of the private sector and industry, the country has what it takes to make it happen. ECA, SRO-SA, that's the ECA Sub-Regional Office for Southern Africa, is in the process of implementing several projects which target the country as one of its beneficiaries. These include building the capacities of MSMEs to be more competitive in a post-COVID-19 era, blue and green economy approaches in the manufacturing and renewable energy sectors, and greening the AFCFTA, among others. The office is committed to ensuring the successful implementation of these initiatives and to accompanying the government to implement the recommendations of the dialogue in the context of its mandate of promoting inclusive industrialization in Southern Africa. In concluding, I would like to convey, on behalf of the Executive Secretary of ECA, Dr. Vera Sangwe, the ECA SRO-SA Director, Ms. Eunice Kamwendo, our deep appreciation to Honorable Sumildu Bola and Mrs. Bibi Fatwa Abdul Rahman Ahmed for the excellent collaboration between the Ministry of Industrial Development, SMEs and Cooperatives and the ECA. Profound thanks and appreciation go to all staff of the ministry for the excellent organization of the meeting under the leadership of the Honorable Minister and Mrs. Abdul Rahman Ahmed. I recognize and applaud the engagement and invaluable contribution of all participants, including presenters, panelists, and moderators, to the success of the dialogue. It is hoped that this engagement will be sustained in the implementation of the recommendations. I thank you.
Ministry of Industrial Development, SMEs and Cooperatives of Mauritius, in collaboration with the United Nations Economic Commission for Africa, have organized yesterday, March 23rd, and today, March 24th, a national policy dialogue on the manufacturing sector in Mauritius. I want to say that this policy dialogue is a joint collaboration between the Ministry of Industrial Development of Mauritius and UNECA. And at UNECA, this is also a joint collaboration between the Sub-Regional Office for Southern Africa, of which I am a part of, and the Africa Trade Policy Center. And this policy dialogue has been made possible thanks to funding from the European Union. The objectives of this policy dialogue really was to first promote the sharing of knowledge about what the government of Mauritius is doing to support the manufacturing sector in Mauritius. As we know, the manufacturing sector in Mauritius and elsewhere has been battered by COVID-19, the impact of the pandemic, and right now we are also having geopolitical tensions, and these geopolitical tensions are driving up oil prices. So the manufacturing sector has been through a lot of challenges these past 2 years. There's COVID, there's now the geopolitical tensions, and the manufacturing sector in Mauritius over the past 5 years have experienced challenges, including a decline in productivity growth. So this national policy dialogue was meant, first of all, to inform the private sector and inform stakeholders as to what the government of Mauritius has been doing over these past 2 years to support the manufacturing sector of Mauritius in such difficult times. The government of Mauritius has come up with a plethora of different type of schemes to support the sector, but also the aim of this dialogue was to promote a dialogue between the public and the private sector as to how to move forward, how to shape the future of manufacturing in Mauritius. And among the major takeaways, we find that there is a need to accelerate the implementation of the industrial policy and strategic plan of the government of Mauritius. 50% of its recommendations are being implemented. Really, the vision of the government is to come up with a manufacturing sector which is globally competitive but also sustainable, a manufacturing sector that transitions from being labor intensive to being technology intensive and knowledge intensive, and also a manufacturing sector that increasingly goes green and adopt environmentally sustainable practices. So this has been a very successful national policy dialogue. In the last panel that I moderated, which was about the textile and apparel sector, there were very rich engagement on the part of the private sector in the deliberations. And among the takeaways, for instance, there has been a clear call on the part of the private sector to have more forums of this type in order to promote dialogue between the public and the private sector. There's also a need to elicit feedback from the private sector when government designs support schemes, to really engage with the private sector to find out what their needs are, to allow to give the private sector a space to express their needs and to provide feedback on what the government is doing. And also we have found that Mauritius is very keen to go green in its manufacturing sector. Mauritius is very keen to transition and embrace Industry 4.0, but the challenges are there, and especially we need to address, Mauritius has to address shortages of labor, shortages of skills, and really find ways to engage into reforms of the educational sector so that Mauritius creates a nation of creative, imaginative thinkers and innovators. But at the end of the day, all the parties concerned are aware of the need to promote the adoption of technology and innovation in the manufacturing sector, and for this to be backed by a labor force that has the necessary skills to embrace Industry 4.0. And at UNECA, we were very happy to have partnered with the government of Mauritius. At UNECA, we are also trying to promote exchanges among enterprises of a region, to promote sharing of learning and sharing of experiences among enterprises of a region. And at UNECA, we are currently implementing 2 projects that precisely focus on technology and innovation among MSMEs. How can we promote the design and application and uptake of innovation among MSMEs? And we are looking forward to continue this strong partnership that we have today with the government of Mauritius in the years ahead.
Hi, my name is Navin Kumakusi. I'm the CFO of Shell Group. So I'm very pleased and happy to have been invited in this prestigious event. And I would say that has been a lot of good sharing, a lot of interesting topic being debated. And for me, I know the focus for the way forward, especially for the textile and the manufacturing industry, is about digitalization and sustainability. And it's very good to know that the government and the different parastatal bodies are putting schemes and measures in place to accompany us. So I'm looking forward to leverage on this scheme. And it's good to know also, given the different panelists who have talked, there are some interesting topics, initiative and action which have shared, which me, as CFO of the group, I'm going to go and share with my colleagues and try to, of course, implement that where it's possible. So I thank everybody and thank for giving me this opportunity to speak about it. Thank you.
Hello, good afternoon. My name is Dr. Sabrina Ramsamy-Irana. I'm the director of the Fashion and Design Institute Mauritius. I'm here today at the National Policy Dialogue, which has been a very interesting platform as presenter and panelist, sharing ideas of the future of the industry, the manufacturing sector. This has been a very constructive debate, which will definitely link the private sector with the government sector in future, and how to tackle challenges that is presenting to the world at the moment. At the Fashion and Design Institute, we are ready to face these challenges by encouraging our youngsters to readapt themselves into new markets, new types of programs, and so that we are very updated with what the industry requires. Thank you.